Republican Congressman Sean Duffy of Wisconsin. Congressman, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
You too, Marie, and welcome to Wisconsin. Great to have you there.
Yes, well, we are all thinking about your colleague, Steve Scalise, and sending him our best wishes. What was your reaction when you heard the news that your Republican colleagues had been fired upon? You were not at the baseball game, and you don't play baseball, right? You're not on the team?
I'm not. Listen, we were shocked. We all get threats. There's a lot of violence that comes into our offices via email and Twitter and on our office doorstep. But this was the first time, obviously, someone took action. And as I was walking around the Capitol, Maria, there was this hollow look of members of Congress, but also staff. When one of your own is shot, it hits people pretty hard. So I guess we're just delighted that no one lost their life, and besides the shooter, but also the fact that you know, we had Capitol Police present with guns to push back, and this has been said many times, and I want to say it again. This would have been an absolute massacre had Capitol Police not been there offering security to Steve Scalise and saving every other baseball player and every other staff who was at the field that day. So this could have been much worse than it was, and we're grateful for Capitol Police.
Yeah, we're lucky to have your better half with us here this morning. Rachel has been sitting with us, and we just had a conversation about security. Do you feel like you should make changes that maybe more than just the leadership should have detail or some security? I mean, some lawmakers are now saying they're reconsidering the security options. Are you doing anything differently?
I don't think members of Congress should have a security detail with us. I don't think that's necessary. But Rachel and I will talk often about our own security in our home, but also the security of the people that work for me. And this came up in the private briefing that all members of Congress had with Speaker Ryan yesterday before we went to the floor. And there has to be a rethinking of how we look at our own personal security in our homes and in our offices, because we don't do enough. And I'll just tell you, Maria, this was a baseball game where members of Congress gather. Had Steve Scalise not been there, there would have been no law enforcement there. There's many other times that members of Congress, in big numbers, gather, and there's no security. So we have to think, even on the Capitol complex, how are we thinking through our soft spots of member security and making sure we have a better presence there from law enforcement? But some have called for all of us to have a security detail. Listen, I don't want that. I don't need that. But I do think we can do better in our homes and offices, keeping us safe.
Congressman, it's Dagan McDowell.
Hi, Dagan.
Americans are so sick of the hateful, violence-filled rhetoric that they're hearing out there. What responsibility do you think that members of Congress, lawmakers, and particularly Democratic lawmakers have to tamp that down and communicate to their constituents that this will not be tolerated?
I think it's a unique difference when it's Gabby Giffords who was shot by someone who was crazy, not a Republican. Everyone tried to blame it on the Republican Party, or, you know, Sarah Palin for saying lock and load or in the crosshairs. And now, when this was actually a Bernie Sanders supporter, Democrats stand up and say, "Oh my goodness, we don't want to blame Democrats here. This is just a problem of a crazy guy." Listen, I think it's important that all members of Congress stand up and push back against violence or threats against any of us. But beyond that, Dagan, the media can't celebrate people who are making violent threats or making violent statements, or if you're rioting in the streets of Berkeley or in LA after an election and you're punching Trump supporters, we can't say, well, they must be angry because of Donald Trump. We have to look at the people themselves and say, listen, we condemn all violence. We condemn anybody that's going to attack another human being. And I'm not going to blame the President of the United States because he won an election for their violence. And that's what the left does. The media has to call out their own liberal base and push back on them as well, and have zero tolerance for violence. And if the liberal media does it, and Democrats do it, and Republicans do it, I think that will take the temperature down to a significant degree. I'm a believer that we should have a vigorous and aggressive political debate. We should argue and we should debate, but in the end, we put our guns down, we put our sticks down, our knives down, and we vote. That's what we do in America. We don't want to transition to violence.
But that's not what's happening. I mean,
that's right.